It was an inside job. Welfare employees accused of stealing your tax dollars.
We weren't just the first to tell you about the alleged thefts. The I-Team warned everyone it was bound to happen. 9 News anchor Brendan Keefe has tonight's I-Team investigation. Brendan?
Carol, the indictment of 3 caseworkers at Hamilton County Job and Family Services shocked the community. But it didn't catch us or one former fraud investigator by surprise, because he told us caseworkers were putting themselves on food stamps a full year before the arrests, and even predicted more theft and fraud on camera long before that. Dennis Hoffman is a welfare fraud investigator with 24 years experience, or at least he was.
Mercedes-Benz Westchester, may I help you?
Now he works as a courtesy driver at Mercedes of Westchester when he's not picking up the odd landscaping job. This man digging in the dirt used to dig for clues. He recovered more than $400,000 in stolen tax money in his last year as an investigator at Hamilton County Job and Family Services.
I investigated and we got returned 9 times what my salary was. 9 times. The investigators paid for themselves.
The William Howard Taft building is empty now. Has been for more than 2 years, but it was once home to one of the best welfare fraud units in Ohio. When we first uncovered the elimination of every single welfare fraud investigator in Hamilton County, Hoffman predicted rampant theft.
I made the comment, why don't we just paint dollar signs on the side of the building and come in and take what you want? Well, obviously, these 3 caseworkers did.
They're using it like a community candy jar, and they were all feeding out of it.
Prosecutors announced the indictment of 3 caseworkers inside Hamilton County Job and Family Services for putting themselves, their families, or others who didn't qualify on food stamps and Medicaid. But it was not a ring.
No, this was not a coordinated effort. This was just something they decided to do, but it was not coordinated at all.
It first started in October of 2008 when the layoffs started.
Job and Family Services laid off half its workforce because of funding cuts. At the same time, the economy led to an explosion in welfare applications. But without investigators, who was checking for fraud?
It was an experienced caseworker. He or she could go ahead and just approve their own case without it being looked over by a supervisor.
This was found just through the normal checks and balances that occurred, which I think is a very positive thing. And then through this, we've learned about some additional checks and balances that we can do.
Moira Weir is director of the agency and its $1.5 billion annual budget. Her employees accused of stealing were caught by co-workers, and she says the now defunct fraud unit would not have made a difference.
You know, I don't think so, because actually the fraud unit was in place when this happened. It was internal controls that caught it. So it's hard to tie the 2 together.
But in this 60-count indictment, only 6 counts began before the fraud unit was disbanded. The other 54 alleged thefts started after the last fraud investigator was laid off or reassigned. In fact, 3 counts of the indictment are alleged to have begun within 6 days of our first report telling people the fraud unit was gone. That fraud unit was not the equivalent of internal affairs. It's unlikely they would have detected an inside job. But Hoffman insists the elimination of his elite unit, combined with the fact that a caseworker could put just about anyone on welfare without a supervisor's approval, sent a message. No one was watching.
That gives you just free rein to do what you want because you know you're not going to get caught.
Ironically, this unemployed welfare fraud investigator qualified for benefits himself, but he refused to go from employee to recipient.
Yeah, I qualified for it, and a lot of people that I know that got laid off with me did receive unemployment, and that's their right. I chose not to. I chose to find work. I just didn't want to be in the system, pure and simple.
The 60-year-old now competes with 20-year-olds for $10 an hour jobs. But the veteran investigator is still haunted by the image of fraud cases collecting dust, even though Job and Family Services has since cleaned out the file room underneath the old fraud unit.
How much money is just going out the window because nobody's checking this?
Job and Family Services says its people are checking. The 3 former employees indicted for stealing were caught internally, and tonight they're awaiting trial. Meanwhile, the agency now requires caseworkers to get approval from supervisors. JFS says it has hired 1 part-time investigator and assigned other employees to investigate fraud. The 24-hour fraud hotline, disconnected when we did our first investigation, is working again tonight because of the I-Team. And the county started a fraud coalition after our initial report. One of its 10 members, Job and Family Services.